We're with City Councilman Gary Wysocky, 7 years on the council, elected the same year as Obama. And we were just talking about the perception one has to work with versus the substance, or the perception of the substance one is working with when you're trying to get a message out there.
Well, it's more about the campaign vis-a-vis performing as an elected.
Right.
Because a campaign it's marketing.
Right.
Is what it is, pure and simple. To the vast pool of unknowns out there, that's a big number.
What was your platform back then? What perception were you trying to engender?
Neighborhood voice. I wanted to have the people of the city have more of a say in what I perceive city government having a predetermined route through any decision-making process.
Right. And I would imagine that aligns pretty much with what you wanted to, what we actually are trying to accomplish versus just creating the perception.
Well, I've tried to be consistent with that.
Yes.
That has been frustrating. It's not it's a challenge to try and get it enacted, but it gets politicized. It can get politicized really quickly on any level, I suppose. I mean, ask President Obama, who you referred to. He had some lofty ideals, and guess what? He hasn't had Congress for 4 of the 6 years. So,
right,
6 of the 8 years.
Despite the frustrations, it seems that you're very impassioned and very dedicated to what you're trying to do with council. What drives you? What brought you into this? Why? Why deal with this? Because it seems so frustrating on so many occasions.
Well, you get that switch that goes off as, I'm going to run for office, if that's the question. It's when I left a Santa Rosa Junior College Board of Trustee meeting.
Okay.
And the room was very impassioned.
You weren't one of the trustees, you were just...
No, I was there as a neighborhood...
representative.
Advocate, just a person.
Yeah.
And we wanted the bond measure to have some money for traffic abatement. This was the bond measure passed by the voters of Sonoma County in 2004.
Okay.
And it all went to the $30 million parking garage just up the street.
Right.
Which exceeded what was promised in the ballot measure. And I came to realize you can have the majority in the room. If you don't have the majority behind the dais, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And there was just some impassioned speeches. Bill Cordham stuck out where he had the whole room silent, and all he was talking about was cooperation with your neighbors.
Right.
He wasn't talking about the nuclear power plant that shouldn't go into Bodega Bay. He was talking about let's deal together and work this out, because the JC is a very well-respected institution.
Surely, yeah.
So, it went from there to, well, how do you get elected? So I walked for Kerry in some of the battleground states, and I found that I actually enjoyed knocking door to door and talking politics.
Yeah. Well, obviously you have a taste for it, but the election process itself, harrowing, strange,
It's strange. It's
surreal. Yeah.
It's perception sometimes overtakes reality, and that's unfortunate because you do get some doors closed in your face, but more often than not, the vast majority of people, they want to be engaged.
Yeah.
And how can I help you? And unfortunately, some are just too busy to give you their time. And so therefore you just want to smile and put something in their hand, and you're probably going to get their vote, sad as it is.
Right. So in terms of perception versus reality, I mean, I'm sure there's perceptions of you that you're aware of versus the reality. Help me paint 2 pictures here. What is a perception of you that you think is inaccurate versus the reality?
Well, I'm not. The first one's tough to answer because that's who knows what people.
I got a list.
I mean, it's unfortunate. I've gotten some very negative phone calls. I've gotten some very negative messages left on public forums.
Yeah.
It's democracy. I have a different idea than you. I'm impassioned enough to try and sell people or win people to my argument.
Yeah.
Because I come from a very dollars and cents side. This is money, or we can talk financial, we can talk emotional as to what the neighborhoods and the community wants, but let's have a discussion. Too often it just gets stymied that we're not going to go there.
Right.
I mean, one of my happiest times was when I stopped Howarth Park from having parking being charged. And that was scheduled to be heard at 12:30 at night on a Tuesday night.
And what did you do? How did you campaign to reach out to?
I just spoke from my heart. I knew I didn't have the votes prior to speaking, but I said, we just passed Measure P on the promise that we wouldn't have to charge for parking. How are you ever going to get people to trust the council or the city to do the right thing if 6 months later we're charging for parking?
Right.
Because we can't cut costs and reorganize city government like we promised we would. We're not even trying. And I just, when I saw Bill, when I've seen other people, the most effective speakers I've seen in the public arena, they're speaking from the heart.
Right. I mean, do you speak from your heart? Do you feel
I try. I mean, you try, but it's if you get too impassioned, you do turn people off.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there's a perception I think that could develop where you would seem angry when in fact you're just being vociferous, you know.
I understand I'm a larger than normal guy. I'm a big guy. I'm used to playing sports. I'm used to having 3 older brothers.
Yeah.
I'm age 60 and it sticks with you, right? I'll be age 60. So, it just, it doesn't go away, but,
Well, you're a tough guy or
tell that to my daughters and my wife. It does nothing. I'll tell you who runs the roost.
Yeah.
So, it's unfortunate that as a former basketball coach, I coached at Pioneer High and I coached in Southern California.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to yell to get your point across in a crowded gym.
Yeah.
It's.
Oh, is that so? It's really just an impulse to be heard rather than, demonstrating a sort of an emotional state.
Well, I don't know. It's just, sure I want to be heard. That's why I'm speaking. But the beauty of the public process is it should be a conversation. There should be debate. Yeah. At times it should get vigorous. If you read our founding fathers, if you read any of their debates, if you watch some of the debates from the past, Lincoln and Douglas, that's our past. That's what made this country great. Is we find that commonality through disagreement. If we can work up and find that common place and then build from there, we've been a powerhouse.
Right. No, and I think the vigor of debate is actually really important. It's something that certainly you respect. I wonder, you have obviously an interest in democracy going back all the way. Did you study history, or were you sort of?
I did. I was fascinated by history in high school and in college, in political science a little bit.
Where are you from? Are you?
I actually grew up in Burbank, California.
Oh, right on. Yeah. That's just there.
On the it's an easy airport to fly in and out of.
Sure is. Yeah.
Grew up in the '60s. Youngest of 4 boys. My parents made the migration to work in the aerospace industry.
Oh, interesting.
In the late '50s.
Right. So you were in the '60s in LA?
In LA. I remember the Watts riots.
Yeah.
And I remember Sunset Strip. We used to, but mainly what my crew did, the guys that I hung with, Burbank was a little town from Iowa in the middle of LA. We had great parks. We were gym rats in all of our parks. Yeah. That's why I'm an impassioned park and rec supporter. Yeah. Because you keep people physically, you keep kids and people. You keep them active, you keep them physically active and mentally stimulated through parks, which is a very healthy activity. You have a better community.
And with it, in Burbank, it's actually sort of underrated. I think it's a really beautiful place.
Oh, it's gotten, especially with the Air Resources Board coming down hard on smog down there. It's actually a lot cleaner than it ever was when I grew up.
That's great.
But we were close enough to Los Angeles, the metropolis, where you could go see all kinds of professional sports, arts. Yeah. It was wonderful, as well as the beach.
Yeah, but what brought you up here then?
Well, you've been to Southern California.
Yeah.
I lived everywhere in Southern California. San Diego was really nice, but you wake up one morning, you got to try somewhere else. Yeah. And it was between here and Crested Butte, actually.
Crested City?
Crested Butte in Colorado.
No, really.
Because I'm a mountain biker and I'm a skier.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
And it's a beautiful piece of the world, as is this. Yeah. And I still have my business to this day in Southern California as a CPA. And this is really easy, especially with the Sonoma County Airport in Alaska Air, no plug intended. Yeah. But it's really easy to get down to Southern California. And that's ultimately what sold me on trying it here. I also had a good friend that lived here. I started riding my bike in Annandale. I actually started road riding up here, which I had stopped doing in Southern California, and this is the spot.
We'll come back to the spot after our break here with Gary Wysocky from the Santa Rosa City Council.
From this angle, it all makes a star.
I'm a teacher. Let me tell you what I make. I make learning a privilege, not a chore.
Show up
and frustration, a tool, not an obstacle. I make working hard seem easy and giving up impossible.
And then we're going to turn the lights and everybody look up.
I make an old subject feel like a fresh thought.
Find me one.
What's your reaction gonna be? Yeah, exactly.
And unconventional methods.
Okay, what else?
Common.
Little tadpoles, the frogs, the spiders, this is their world.
There's nothing.
And then they die. Go ahead, go, go, go.
I'm a teacher. I make more.
We're with Gary Wysocky, City Council person with the City of Santa Rosa on 7 years now, and we're talking about sort of like, so you have in some ways kind of two lives. You have a life in Southern California professionally as a CPA, and then you have your real life up here, and a very active life as you're describing. And
in many ways, yeah. the fax machine and the
Fax
Southwest.
machine?
Yeah, no, that set me free because you could actually fax documents. And
Oh, when did you move up then?
91.
Okay, so-
90,
okay, that's
91.
okay,
I've been here
yeah. 25
years.
Wow.
But the fax machine was unable to get was a way to get documents quickly to a client if you needed to be.
You were like
get
the
that.
portrait of telecommuting then. You like.
I was a
love it,
forerunner
yeah.
of that. I think that would be accurate. Exactly.
When they finally build the train that goes all the way to LA, which I'm sure they're going to do eventually, will you go back and forth, or are you just locked in up here?
You know, the telecommuting's gotten to the point now where I'm just with the dual screens and the video conferencing, it's getting to be less of an issue.
That's great.
So yeah, in some ways, yeah, it is good.
You know, I wonder as we move forward and more creative workers and intellectual type jobs get domiciled here in Sonoma County and Santa Rosa in particular, if we're going to see more of that, where you get the lifestyle aspects of living here, but your business is in New York, your business is international.
Well, I think that's the knowledge-based economy. But the
Yeah.
challenge, as we were talking earlier, you've got the automated cameras here.
Right.
You used to have the cameramen. These automated cameras aren't going to buy any cameras, right? They're robots.
That's
the old
true.
Henry Ford line.
That's true.
Why he didn't automate his factories is because the robots won't be buying his cars.
That's true.
That's our challenge.
I hear
as a
you.
society.
What, you think robots are going to replace like the service economy here and stuff like that? I mean,
I think automation's replacing
Yeah.
a lot of jobs.
yes, we fired all our guys, and once we got the 3 cameras, because
Just the two of us. Daedalus,
Yeah,
let me tell you
yeah,
something.
yeah.
I'm the featured guest, so no, go ahead.
I'm going to replace you with a robot next. It's just gonna be, then I'm. But no, seriously, automation. I mean, in terms of the industry here, have we seen an uptick in automated automation of our industries? I mean, what do we make here? I mean, Annie's mac and cheese or Amy's mac and cheese. That's not robots yet, is it?
It's not, but the more automation in all the industries, you're talking wine, obviously, and ag, there'll be
True.
more automation there. That's a huge part of it. But, Lagunitas Brewing is a big player.
Yeah.
We're getting more and more brew pubs. There's a limit there, perhaps you're right.
There's a trend, though. It seems that there's a sort of artisanal, like sort of contrarian response, I think, to some of the automation that's happening, where it's more handmade now and all that. Maybe that's just like peculiar cases that get a lot of attention because it's already. But it seems like there's kind of a movement germinating almost from Santa Rosa to get more hands-on and to really honor labor and.
Well,
kind of economy.
I don't know if that's germinating from Santa Rosa. I think that's
Yeah.
part of the buy local. Let's support our community.
Fair enough, yeah.
That trade for trade's sake
Right.
is not always a good thing. That's why
And it's also kind of a privilege thing too. So you're paying $15 extra on everything just for the sake of having it say artisanal on it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's just you back to supporting your economy though, and where I was going to go with it was economics. They call it the dismal science for a reason.
Right.
I don't think that they truly know where the world economy is going as we reach different constraints with what we can do with growth.
Right.
I
Well,
mean,
where's Santa Rosa's economy going though, in the context of everything that's happening?
Well, I like what we're going in the context of Sonoma County. Last night at
Okay.
the Ag and Open Space Advisory Committee, the community separators are up for re-election, revisiting in 2016. They expire. It's a 20-year ordinance countywide that was enacted in 1996. So you're going to see that in 2016. And that's made this county unique. You can actually drive from Santa Rosa north or south, and you can see the distinct communities.
Right.
Where else in the Bay Area can you do that?
Can't.
So
Yeah.
we should keep that.
Yeah.
That's part of our uniqueness, and it does make us a travel destination. It makes us a quality of life issue. So it's one of our challenges as to how to fit in the need for more housing while limiting the land we're going to build on.
So
my point.
maybe build up. I mean, maybe
Yes,
go
that's
for
where
more
we have
urban
to go.
density. Yeah.
We have to go there.
I mean, what is downtown Santa Rosa going to look like in 10 years? In your vision, if you could.
10 years might be too short, maybe 20.
Okay.
But 10 years, fair enough. 4 to 6. I'm
Wysocky
hopeful-
Towers.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like.
Right there with the Donald. No, it's somebody like a Hugh Futrell or a
Right.
Rich Coombs or a Steve McCullough. Those are the guys that know how to build.
Right.
They know how to develop.
But do you want Santa Rosa to build up? I mean.
I think we have to.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I suppose there's
I think
nowhere
we
else
have to.
go.
I mean, where else are you going to put it? Because there's only so much land.
So how do you do that and not ruin the character of Santa Rosa? Or
Innovative. I mean, the character is going to evolve.
right.
It's not, the character wasn't, today's character wasn't what it was 100 years ago, 300 years ago. So it's,
Yeah.
everything's, it's constantly changing.
So when you got up here in '91 versus where we are now, like what have you seen change culturally here in terms of its character?
Oh,
And what did you do to it? No.
I think we've gotten bigger, but I was too busy out exploring this new county. I can't. That's a tough one for me to answer.
Okay, yeah.
It's a really. I volunteered my time at Pioneer High School for 7 years coaching, and that was a blast working with the kids. So we had a bigger enrollment area then. We had a lot more athletes coming through, and actually.
Yeah, that seems to have waned a bit. Yeah.
So that's a different. That's one of the things that I've personally seen. But
that might be like kind of a national trend though in some ways too. It just seems like kids are being diverted to different arenas now, But okay, so like I've seen like a distinct change culturally in terms of the arts scene. I think there's a bit more respect for it, or more of an identification with it. We're less of a hick town than we used to be, right? I think that, but there's a better integration of all those elements.
Well, we're close enough to the city where we always got good acts coming through, is what I thought.
Right.
So I haven't seen that change. That's been somewhat of a constant. We've always had some good, I mean, if you want to talk arts, the Green Music Center is a big addition. At what cost? You'd have to talk to people at SSU about that.
Right.
But it's a lovely hall, and we'll get some world-class acts there that will continue to come there. Transportation and logistics and infrastructure, we're always going to be clogged by 101. I'm glad to see the SMART train coming next year. That's something I walked for twice.
Yeah.
I walked for that in 2 campaigns, and I served on that board, the shortfall board, and that was wonderful to help push that forward.
But so once that's turned on, I mean, we're going to have people coming from the city, or very likely people going to the city, I think, for jobs and that kind of thing. Is that going to mess up our economy?
I think it'll help us. I think it'll help us. I think it'll bring us more people, which brings a challenge in itself. As a mountain biker, I talk to a lot of my friends ride the Annandale State Park.
Right.
What they don't understand, I think one of the unintended consequences or unforeseen consequences of SMART is there's a lot of people that are going to be coming up taking bicycle trips for the day.
Right.
That's going to be a point of interest. You're going to see even more people into some of our open spaces. But we have plenty here.
Yeah.
Taylor Mountain, Sonoma Mountain, it doesn't all have to be Annandale State Park. But
we can accommodate them, surely. I wonder though.
I don't know. Talk to some, Annandale State Park, some people say it gets loved to death, or it's going to get loved to death. I'm not so sure, but it is the finest example in California, some say, of oak woodlands. And it is drop dead gorgeous. And a lot of folks that live here don't know that. There's 3 levels to that park. You can get to the back side. There's a marsh called Letson Marsh at the top. You think you're in the middle of the Sierras.
Wow.
It's that pretty.
I have to say, obviously, I've never been there. That's amazing.
That's the beauty. Well, that's the beauty of the mountain bike. It adds range.
Yeah.
On a less impact, and I've always been physically active.
Yeah.
And what I love about cycling, it allows me to maintain that as I'm pushing 60, because there's less impact on the body, so I can still get out and get some exercise. And the views that you get cycling are just phenomenal.
Let's come back to that after the break here with Gary Wysocky from Santa Rosa City Council. We'll be right back.
If you don't fix them, sparks from dragging tow chains could cause a wildfire, and that could be scary.
Smokey.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
We're back with Gary Wysocky, City Councilperson with the City of Santa Rosa. We're talking about mountain biking and the possible impact of more mountain bikers coming from various locales due to the SMART train and all that. But you raised something interesting, which is there are places you can get lost in Santa Rosa, and by choice, and enjoy that kind of world. It seems that that's a restorative phenomena for you. Do you need that?
Very much so.
Yeah,
absolutely. It centers me. It gets me away from the office, the challenge of running my CPA practice, the challenge of being a councilman in the city of Santa Rosa, and the challenge of being a dad to 2 young ladies and being a good husband to my wife.
Now you've got one daughter at USC now.
Yeah, she's in her senior year.
Oh wow! And then one also here
at Santa Rosa High School. She's a sophomore or junior.
Do you feel like as a parent you've done your job now and
well, I don't know if you ever feel that way, because they always hopefully they always come back to you. The teenage years, I remember how I was with my parents, and so I'm very grateful that they're still coming back and asking me questions right now.
Yeah,
and just love seeing them grow and progress. So it's been a lot of fun.
Are they most like you or most like your wife, do you think?
Well, one's like me and one's like my wife. So that's a split. That's the very politically correct answer. Most definitely. My oldest at USC, she's a political science major. She's fascinated by politics. She's
that's
volunteering in a campaign down there. She also interned at Congressman Mike Thompson's office in
interesting.
D.C. last summer.
So do you think this is like a genetic disposition you've passed down, this sort of interest in politics?
That's a scientific question. I don't think anyone really knows if it's genetics or environment, but
Right.
you can see genetics in your kids sometimes that just pop out and just like, whoa. Other things are definitely environmental.
Yeah. Well, your own background, like, were you raised in a political household? Were you?
One of my first memories was my father waiting up in the 1960 election to see John F. Kennedy beat Richard Nixon.
Wow.
And him saying, "Now I can go to sleep. I can sleep well."
That's a great memory.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
It really was.
So you must have been very young, of course, when the assassination occurred.
I remember that quite vividly, though,
Well-
because the day stopped. The whole world stopped.
Yeah.
I remember my second grade teacher crying. She got the note and just started crying.
Wow.
And it was, yeah, exactly. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And they sent us all home, and the world stopped. There were 3 TV channels, and it was all about events happening in Dallas. And I'm kind of getting chills, goosebumps, even remembering it, because it was a different time. And the iconic picture of LBJ's getting sworn in, you never forget that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember seeing live Jack Ruby kill Lee Harvey Oswald in the bottom of the Texas Police Department, because that was live.
You saw that broadcast?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it was like, holy cow.
What was that like? I mean, dramatic, I'm sure, but
It was like, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And I think Jackie Kennedy doesn't get enough credit because she stood by Lyndon Baines Johnson when he got sworn in, and she kept her dress on.
yeah.
As in, this country's going to survive. I want them to see what they did to me, is what she said later, I think. And I thought she never got credit for that, or at least it seems to have been forgotten, and it should be remembered.
Yeah.
She was a pretty strong presence at
Very
that time.
inspiring. Yeah.
Yes, she was.
In terms of inspiration, who's inspired you?
Well, locally into politics, Bill Cordham.
Yeah.
I mean, he helped stop the nuclear plant at Bodega Head.
Doesn't have to be politics, though, like just broadly, like philosophically even. Not to knock Cordham. I mean,
It's gosh. You read stuff like Gandhi, you watch people like Christopher Hitchens, people that click like that, and it's fascinating in terms of how they think. When you see someone like a Magic Johnson, how he elevated his teammates and brought them with him, that's inspiring. That was one of my first, one of my better heroes. I mean, Sandy Koufax, the way he mowed
Right.
down people and just went out there and gave his all. I was always, like I said, I was a gym rat.
Right.
So I always gravitated to sports or politics. Robert Kennedy, I remember the assassination of him as well.
You must have been down in LA at the time.
Oh yeah, I was in 6th grade at that time, because that wasn't that long after, and it was, the world didn't stop, but there were a lot of sad people.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of sad people.
You saw that era where there were a lot of assassinations and that kind of stuff. We live in a different time now. Not as many as those kind of assassinations, but a lot.
There'd be people that would disagree with you on that.
Fair enough. Okay, good point. Okay, but we see a lot of gun violence in different ways.
Oh, absolutely.
What is it about America and guns?
Boy, I don't know. It's sad. My wife lived for a long time in rural Minnesota, and I understand the need for a woman living in rural Minnesota to have a gun. I understand that. But if we can't get it together after 20 kindergartners get shot in Sandy Hook, Connecticut,
Right.
or whatever, I mean, that's just horrific. Kindergartners. And that doesn't say that something's wrong with this law. I mean, if you look at the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia, how'd that get twisted by Justice Scalia to say that I get to have a gun from my cold dead hands, to quote Charlton Heston, right? It's the best argument against lifetime tenure on the Supreme Court. I mean, Mr. Scalia should be held accountable for for that opinion. Mm-hmm. But back to your point, I just don't understand it. It's not keeping us safe.
Yeah.
We have I know it's wonky, but the inspector, the medical top medical officer for the federal government, his confirmation is being held up because he wants to talk about gun violence as being a health hazard. Well, the numbers bear that out.
Yeah. Yeah, guns will kill you.
Guns
bad
do
for you.
kill us.
Yeah.
They do kill us.
Yeah.
Isn't it the #1 cause of death in America today? I think it is.
For a certain age bracket, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So why don't we address that?
When when you leave the council, which you might do someday,
Oh, I definitely will someday.
looking back on your career, at least at this point, and I know you got a lot of years ahead of you, what do you think you'll be most proud about?
Yeah, that's a good question. Right now, I'm most proud about trying to make it more open and more transparent. When I came in, it was almost a predetermined decision was going to be made. In all fairness, there were issues that we did grapple with honestly and openly, but way too many of the times it was a preset, as I just saw in a memo last week, the desired outcome. No, if it's a public matter, it should be on for debate in the public square.
Wait, that's the language they use?
That was the language a staff person used. Help the desired outcome. That's inappropriate.
Whose desire?
Like,
okay.
That's
Yeah.
what makes government, not a business. This is government.
Yeah.
So I've helped shine a light on that, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
It has definitely cost me personally and politically because folks didn't like it. But for instance, even the thought of holding a public meeting in a locked door.
Right.
No. The thought of entering into material contracts based upon admittedly false information. And I can't talk about it because it's in closed session. No, the decision's been made, but I think the public needs to know that this was the basis for that decision. And I got shouted down for that.
When you stand up for these things that you believe in and you want to reveal or shine a light on, it seems to come at some personal sacrifice. What drives you to make that sacrifice?
Oh, I was the youngest of 4 boys, so
You're used
a question like that doesn't even register.
Right.
Because I was constantly fighting a battle with one of my older brothers just to be heard or just to try and beat him in a ball game. But when you reflect later at the day, you think about it and it's like, that was really a cheap shot, or that was an unfair move. And I feel bad more for my family, for them perhaps having to endure it. When my then 14-year-old has to pick up a robocall saying that, well, don't vote for Wysocky because if you have kids, because he's not for economic growth and your kids won't be able to have jobs.
What a moment, wow.
And that's like, really?
Yeah.
You want to point out how I'm not for economic growth? And and you just follow the money and you find out who did the calls, and obviously it's politically motivated, but it's unfortunate that negativity works in our society. And that speaks to our lack of, a lot of us, of creative thought, of critical thinking.
So, just to wrap up, are you proud of who you are? Are you happy with the results of?
To answer that question, I think you got to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and nod or smile.
Yeah.
And I can.
Good.
I mean, we're not perfect. I've made my mistakes. There's things I'd like to have back. I don't know anyone among us that couldn't say that, but I give you an honest effort, and I give you a core, consistent belief in that effort. So, sure.
Excellent. Gary Wysocky, City Councilman, thank you for being on the show. Really
My pleasure.
appreciate it. It was a good one. Yeah.